All right, folks, we're going to record this. I want to make sure it's working.
All right.
We did it earlier on.
Start recording.
Did we start recording? She start recording?
Oh, well, then we're all right. Start recording.
Yes, she got a thumbs up there. You're in business.
Perfect. Okay. Let's go.
So just go straight.
Business. So, look, thanks everybody. Fantastic day. Always a good day. PWI Belfast is always a good day, but what a day, what a year this is. Such a difference for us. Fantastic. The delivery of a transformative project. And we are going to get a presentation today on the delivery of the project. Look, but before that, I want to do a wee bit about the timeline and what brought us to this point today. I suppose, where do you start with a timeline? But in the beginning, wonderful the way history repeats itself. In 1848 was the first station in and around Great Victoria Street, and apparently it was transformative. It was of strategic importance, and here we are now, 175 years later, the same thing again. That then, by 1852, became the amalgamation of two lines, which, reading into the history books, it said it was the terminus for one of the most important lines in Ireland. So it really just shows where you come from. But I wasn't about in 1850. So moving on through the generations, there has always been a presence in that site up until 1976, when, through circumstances you can imagine, Belfast was in a bit of trouble, and the main station in Belfast was moved to Central Station in Belfast, Lanyon Place as it is now. But the good news was, by 1995, Great Victoria Street station was reintroduced, and the photograph you can see on the screen is it under construction. And at this point, I was still at university, but heading out of university shortly. And the GVS, as I knew it then, was the 1995 version. I just put this up to give some sort of context of what we had. A lot of us had maintained this. I certainly had the job of maintaining this for about 10 or 12 years. Curved layout. So we're going to come on to some of the ideas later about how we got to the delivery of the new station. But a curved layout, 200-metre radii, curved platforms, curved plane line, curved S&C. I didn't design the original one, but that's what we were dealing with. Jointed track throughout, 60-foot jointed track, timber sleepers, took a lot of battering. Incredibly busy layout. Obviously a busy station, but a busy layout. If you weren't on a curve, you were straight in the S&C. You were off the back of S&C onto more S&C. We're back out of S&C on the plane line. There's a TPWS aerial. There's an AWS magnet. Just absolutely rammed. Full of services, both electrical services, drainage services that we've talked about, and also train services. Really, really busy area. No slack at all. So anything at all went down, the system went down. A really, really difficult place to be in. And ultimately a critical asset for the company, critical asset for the country, to be honest. And you're busy maintaining that, and you're working away, and you're going home at night thinking, well, what's coming next and where am I? And then somebody says to you, wait do you hear what we're thinking of? Go ahead. There's preliminary discussions about a new Belfast transport hub. It's going to be fantastic. It's transformational. It's iconic. You've never seen it like this before. And you go, okay, I have a brave bit of my plate at the minute looking after this. No, it's going to be a flagship. It's much more than a station. And I went, okay, all right. But it's conceptual at best. And this is in 2012. At this point, your assets that you have are tired. They're old. You're getting tired and old yourself. You're looking after them as best you can. But this is talked about. And you go, okay. And I had a decision to make at that time. And one thing I want to bring up is, so that's in 2012. By 2016, this image is taken directly from the front of the Belfast Telegraph. By 2016, the public consultation opens on the proposed new Belfast transport hub on Great Victoria Street. And the layout that came out in 2016 has a striking similarity to what's out there today. I suppose that's one of the points I want to make today is absolutely the talk is about the delivery and how proud we should be about the delivery. But pre-delivery, there's a lot of work for engineers to do too, to make sure that they're involved pre-delivery. Because coming on to the next slide, 2012, 2016, key years for the project, and I picked this off the internet. KPMG did a study in 2020, and they said that only 51% of projects are likely to reach their original intent and goals. And they also continued, the biggest mistake project teams can make, project managers, is to assume. And the biggest mistake end users can make is to let them assume. And at that time, I was, as I say, involved in the project, but incredibly busy, and we're a very small company, and we're still quite a small company. But at that point, I had to say, right, what do we need? Well, what do we want? I usually start with what I wanted. What do we want out of this? And then I very quickly realized you're not going to get everything you want. But what do you need? What are you not willing to compromise on? Why do you need it? And where ultimately can we flex? Because this site again, architectural, bus, rail, public interface, permanent way, and me sitting in the corner going, I demand this and nothing but this. So you had to know where you could flex and where you couldn't. And I suppose coming out of that, for me, there was golden rules. Certainly you've got your standards and what's allowed and so on, but what's optimized and where will we not go? And again, because we were so busy, early on there were conversations around, right, what's this going to look like? And when you talk to the operators about what we want all trains to go everywhere. Well, we're not going to be able to allow that. Why do the trains need to go there? And we'll get into the end. There were certain limitations on where trains could and couldn't go. If there wasn't a realistic need for the train to go there, we weren't going to build it because the risk associated with the S&C and so on, and the cost associated with the S&C. So early on, we started to decide almost what came into the hub and spoke idea now. These are where trains can and can't go. There was also the idea of interchangeable S&C units. We're very keen to say we can cram a lot of things in, but then if something breaks, it's bespoke. Where do we get another one from? We don't have another one. We've got 20 types of strategic spur. So we'll come up early on with the idea of interchangeable S&C units. Then we moved into design and we had all the design codes. But I remember at the time, I can't come to all the design meetings. I just don't have time to come. David McShane was involved in these meetings where it was, right, David, I want straight platforms. I want plain line track. We know it has to be on a curve. I'm accepting no radii less than 200 meters. And I want standard S&C types. I don't want double slips. I don't want all these things. I know they'll do it, but I don't want them. And then as well as design, we said in terms of specification, one thing saying you want this design, but what specification will it be built to? So really early, 2014, 2015, CWR throughout, any of the rails that are on the curves have to be pre-bent, premium steels, 6-hole IRJs throughout. Lubrication has to be involved from the outset. It won't be an afterthought. It has to be in from the outset. We'll have to have spurs. And the beauty of this was all the options had to meet these rules. And it was clear and it was concise. Now, there was a lot of detail, a world of detail, but I wasn't really involved in the detail. And the beauty of that was then coming from that, the end position we got to, whenever it was ready for delivery, was I remember being brought into a room and somebody said, we've got 42 different options. We've narrowed it down to 42 different options. Okay. Do they all meet the rules? No, 17 of them don't meet the rules. Turns out you only got 25 options. And we got to that position straight away. And it made it so much easier for us because you weren't involved in all the optioneering, but you knew like all of those 25 options meet the golden rules. They all worked for us. There's variations on a theme, but they all work. So really it was what was selected at that point in time was the best fit. Everybody didn't get everything they wanted, but I think everybody got what they needed. And like, how good a position is that to be in a project 4 or 5 years before it actually starts being built, that you know you're going to get what you want at that point. And the solution that we have in front of us today, which goes back to the solution that was on one of the earlier slides, and the solution that's by the way, as we stand, met all the golden rules and many of them were bettered. So from my point of view, that was what needed to deliver. And then it was time to deliver. And Lisa's going to tell us how she went about delivering it for us all.
Good afternoon all. So today there's a clear vision we can hear from Translink's point of view, and starting in 2020 was my journey on the great Belfast Transport Hub as it was a project, but Belfast Grand Central Station as we know it today. So where is it for those who may be not fully aware of the Belfast area? It's in a quite constrained site, as you can see. It sits aside with the West Link. It's got Grosvenor Road, Durham Street, an existing railway that was into the Great Victoria Street sitting on the other side. There we've got an aerial view. Looking back, you can see the iconic roof structure at about 12 o'clock on the slide. And it's sitting within 15 minutes of walking off the city centre. It sits right behind the back of Great Victoria Street and the old bus station that we had. So the project ambition was pretty clear. We want a transport-led regeneration project. We want to transform Belfast for Belfast City and the wider Northern Ireland. And we want to connect local communities and neighbourhoods. Mona touched on it earlier, decarbonisation has become a huge part of what we do. We want to set the high standard for not only as a project, but also for communities and by social requirements. We want to see a construction project that does something a bit different. We also want to be climate focused, and there was a key purpose and how to deliver this facility on the ground. Here's a kind of good overview, and it's also something to keep in your mind as we go through the slides. The triangle in the center, the red, is called the Blythefield Curve. Roughly about 3.8 kilometres of track was renewed in this area. But the area in red, with the line going down to Dunmurry and around to Langan Station, was the extent of the signalling and telecoms that was undertaken under this project. So a huge amount of signalling and telecoms was undertaken. So how did we get to this? For those that don't know, there's always clear interfaces. The building we will not be covering today. We're largely focused on the railway side, but it gives you an idea of the number of platforms. We went from 4 to 8. So we have a bit of a game changer from timetabling and an operational point of view too. More space for our operational colleagues, and we kind of keep touching on it. We wanted this to be a transformational project, a flagship, something to be proud of. We know rail has increased dramatically over the number of years. We know tourism is on the increase. So we want something to showcase this city. We didn't get here alone, and I think this is kind of the point where we need to kind of go through our suppliers. Arup was the P-way designer for the tracks, and Mervyn touched the key rules and requirements we set. Babcock was the S&T designer and also the S&T contractor. Babcock was the P-way contractor. Byrne was the slab track designer out on the existing railway corridor for the formation. And Arcadis was our NEC contract administrators. But TransLink on this project was the heart, and worked collaboratively with all these suppliers throughout. I've kind of broken it out clearly on the slide so you can see what we're going to cover and a bit more clear how to take path. If I'm honest, you could talk for ages on this project, but we had to pick out key points which had a P-way interface. I'd love to say we landed on site, we owned the land, and we could rock up and start laying track. It's never that simple. The piece of land we see going through did have ground conditions that we need to address. On the enabling works, there was also an existing Blackstaff River culvert diversion that was part of the enabling works in 2020 that needed diverted. The NIROC was also quite a late change in the contracts where we basically said, okay, we have an opportunity where we have an old NX panel. It's time for an upgrade. Parts were getting difficult. It also became part of this project and was a separate contract, but with the same milestones and same program to deliver to. The permanent way, as I touched on, was Arup was the designer and was fundamental in those high level thinkings back in 2017, 2018 to get the concept design right. Enabling works again, under green construction, we had to expand a pedestrian bridge. We know the up and down lines, but we also had a new third line, again, to increase that capacity that comes into the railway. Signalling and telecoms was all designed and constructed by Babcock, and the formation we will be touching on today is Byrne, but there was two formation designers in this project, one with the FSGV joint venture, Barnes & Sear, and one by Byrne, but again with transition zones and interface meetings to control that as well. So where we start back in 2020. What needs to be done? Unfortunately, there was a Blackstaff culvert sitting high across the site. We were quite constrained. I can't lower the Blythefield curve. We were very constrained with those existing levels. We were a traditional track bed, so bottom ballast, top ballast in your rail. There's no slab track on this project. So therefore, with constraints with that depth, the culvert had to be lowered. This involves things like, before you start, ecology surveys, devegetation works, archaeology assessments, and working with our frameworks and contracts teams to basically get this in place and understand what we needed to do. So the length was no small feat for green construction. The length was 360 metres. We need a transition slab for the imposed train loading. We also had a 600-metre reinforced concrete section. And to put in concept, it was a 7-metre by 2-metre box culvert where we'd cross the P-way. I've kind of shown a slide the cross section. So you can see there the 7 metres by the 2 metres, the internal dimensions. You can see the thickness of the slab. And you can see this was basically under the railway lines as they approached the new station, while the eastern part was under the new bus terminus. I've also included a slide to show the transition slab that was right on the western end of the culvert, between the new Pee-wee alignment, and then obviously considering this was a design working life of 120 years, a category 5 in accordance with BSEN 1990, and also making sure the hot, hard and soft spots was also addressed. In this photograph, it kind of shows clearly the scale. Some people never seen this, so it's always below your feet. So you can see the line of the diversion in the larger photo. You can see the scale. You can see the sheet piling. Couldn't do any work because of the ground conditions, so we had to do a cast in situ, box concrete. But obviously, in order to do that, we had a sheet pile either side. It kind of shows the extent and the amount of reinforcement works that was required in order to build this below the Pee-wee lines. And this was all in 2020 to 2021. Throughout this project, there was extensive site supervision, rebars, checking, and one of the key things that was done on this site was the amount of work you could do on the brownfield site. So basically, get as much work done that's outside the existing railway corridor as possible to de-risk the back end of your programme and ensure successful delivery in 2024. And that theme is the whole way through the project. Another kind of good drawing there shows the green construction as well, just the scale and the size that traverse the site. That point in the photograph is where the new railway tracks crosses into Belfast Grand Central Station. Again, you can see the size of the reinforcement deck and all reinforced steel. Also, I should point out this was in 2020-21, probably not the most ideal time with supplies and materials and trying to get it. There became quite a logistics from a program manager to make sure you had everything sourced and then acquire more land to place the materials on. It didn't stop there. Also for 308A, it was a pedestrian bridge, an existing pedestrian bridge. So we had to increase the length of the steel bridge. Again, this was delivered under Graham's Constructions under the enabling works. And basically, in order to widen, there's up and down line, but also we need the additional line coming into Belfast Grand Central Station. Again, you can see a lot of groundworks. We had to provide 8 number soil anchors, approximately 70 metres long to support the existing east abutment. And there's provision of 8 number mini piles to support the new east bank set as well. There was a relocation of the east bank set about 3.5 metres back from the existing east abutment. But one of the challenges is when you do your groundworks, we hadn't moved the track at that point. So clearances was quite a big thing we had to be careful of, because obviously trains were still running into Great Victoria Street. So there was a lot of signal sighting and consideration working with our colleagues of it to make sure that the ground anchors didn't oppose any signal sighting issues. You can see there's a plan of the structure of 308A to span the new track into Belfast Grand Central Station. So the railway formation design was quite a significant amount of works, more than probably that any of us ever imagined in 2020. There was an area of 150 metres, which was per ground. This is basically as you go between pedestrian bridge 308A and the new busway bridge, which you'll see is I always call it the rusty coloured, but the corrugated steel bridge that crosses 51 metre span over the new railway, and it's also there for our bus operations colleagues. There's a good slide here that kind of shows the solid red box on the left hand side shows the scale of the ground improvement works. We didn't install any slab track. We also want to respect the maintenance requirements as well. So we wanted a standard construction makeup of the railway track. So therefore, below that, the bottom ballast is a 600 mil depth reinforced in situ concrete slab to basically support the settlement requirements. Yes, there's quite stringent requirements set from the start, but the whole point is that we do not maintain this for quite a significant number of times. And the old engineers probably knew something, because hence when anybody went into Great Victoria Street and you come under that bridge, you take a sharp right into the station, which avoided the whole area of Belfast Fleet. But we own the land, we're quite restrained. We came up with a solution, and therefore we poured a concrete slab. It wasn't that easy because unfortunately where it spanned under the brownfield site, which is where we're behind the railway corridor, where you could work during the day. Other part unfortunately, you can see at the bottom of the red, sat directly above the existing railway that went into Great Victoria Street. And then we had a construction street environment to construct the top left part. So we had to use 3 different blockades in order to get this constructed. We did an awful lot outside the brownfield site, but we had to basically utilize the summer and utilize Easter. But we couldn't pack everything into the summer blockade because all that would mean is your blockades keep extending, and then has a knock-on effect on revenue. So looking at clever ways to basically pour the interface at Christmas, get as much done by Easter, and then leave you with the area in red to complete at the front end of the summer blockade in May. The signalling and telecoms in the permanent way, which is probably why we're all here. So we're kind of finally able to get into the ground. We're finally able to deliver. We've done our enabling works, and we're now at the point where we can actually lay track. I picked this slide up again because it just is a good reminder for the scale of where we come in and set the track. In the Blightfield curve and into the Belfast Grand Central Station, and then also the extent of the signalling and telecoms. It's pretty clear due to the size and scale of changes to the permanent way in Belfast Transport, it required a significant new and modified S&T infrastructure. A new route relay interlocking has been provided for the new Grand Central Station, and that's to replace the existing Great Victoria Street system. This new interlocking is the largest built for Translink, and it's one of the largest to be installed in the UK in recent years. So it's kind of important to keep that in mind, and also a reminder that you can't keep packing everything into a blockade. So what we did, and I always say it's quite painful, before we got to 2024 was there was a lot of ancillary civils. There was a lot of advanced procurement of contracts and materials, because we understand there was a race against time of procuring steel, for example, relay rooms, PSPs, types of cables that were used, had all very long lead-in times. So we couldn't wait till Easter 2024. We had to get a plan in place. And one of those things was basically understanding what advanced goods we needed to have. But logistically, that also gave us problems of where do you put that then. Easter 2024 was a great trial run. It basically helped us to understand if our compound works, our logistics, how to basically access track, how well does the whole team work. It was the first point, I suppose, from a permanent way track installation that we got to see how we all work together. It was the first real test from a P-way point of view. And in that, in Easter 2024, we did the little area you can see in yellow and blue. So there was like 170 meters and 186 meters. And this is the up and down Dublin. We also put in the 778 points. So you can see there, just kind of the area where we're talking, it's just at the back end of the between 308A and just back end of 308A. I think one of the challenges came from the teams coming across was what plant, what resources, what do we have available, which is always kind of not funny, but from Network Rail, where you've got an endless amount of suppliers at hand, you very much have to work in that lean way in Translink. We had 3 RVs and trailer boxes. We had 2 13-ton excavators. We had 1 dozer, 1 loading shovel, 1 forklift, and 1 tamper, and we delivered the pit lane line. But it was a good test and understand how everything was going to work for the big blockade in summer. To give you a little bit of context, and I have the same statistics for the summer, the ballast, there was 1,300 tons, spoil, 3,300 tons, sleepers, 530, and the points and the type fill. So not on a huge scale, but it kind of did test the water to see where do you put things to understand how we work logistically around each other. We also had the main works contractor working on the other side of the boundary fence, so there was certain interfaces and also how to work from a CDM boundary too that had to be considered. Here's some photos, and you can see of laying the track. It's quite visual as the way we go through the slides now, and you can see what we've installed. So that's the up and down Dublin, and you see in the first photo there the 308A that was delivered during the enabling works. And it's just a nice schematic plan to show the 778 points with the bridge 308A there in red. And a few more photos showing of 778 and the tamper in for the completion of the works. The Mervyn's kind of touched on it as well. Like there was a lot of work and a lot of requirements and stipulated from the start. So some of the key information was the P-way and S&T was largely undertaken during the Easter and the main blockade in summer 2024. And we'll go through that a bit more in the slides as this come. The details of the wheel-free limits and the signalling protection, the operational requirements was also undertaken to facilitate a whole system integration. And as I touched on, and we'll come to a couple of slides, included NIROC. Same milestone, same dates, had to come as one. One depended on the other. You couldn't deliver BTH without, or as we know at Belfast Grand Central Station, without NIROC. And apologies, NIROC is Northern Ireland Operating Railway Centre. And we'll explain that shortly. The plain line sleepers, they were the NI or01 and or NI or19. The type was concrete, we used throughout. Concrete sleepers with undersleeper pads was used throughout the project. The maximum sleeper spacing shall be 650 mil centres. We had the lateral restraint plates used provided in the continuous welded rails tracked with certain criteria to follow too. The maximum length of rail between two fish-plated joints was set as 18.3 meters. The minimum ballast depth beneath design bottom of the bearer was always kept at 300 mil. The track filter drainage was used throughout and was designed to network rail standards. And that was to the 1 in 50 plus 20% climate change, checked for the 1 in 200 and checked for the 1 in 500. So basically future-proofing that we should never have track beds on this job. We also want a fully stressed track. We also used CEM56 rail with shallow depth switches. And we used optimized insulated joint locations and specification. And the other thing was we really wanted to start using premium rail on this job too, and use throughout. Again, the maintainer always at the forefront of our mind and helping to reduce maintenance in the future. So we've touched on it earlier. So NIROC was a part of very much the project, and the project teams all sat together. We all sat as one, bringing the S&T, the P-way and NIROC in on the one date. So what is it? Because a lot of people don't realise Northern Ireland Railway Operating Centre is a new ROC based at Langan Station. So the railway operates in Northern Ireland are currently controlled from 3 separate signalling control points, namely Belfast Central, Portadown and Coleraine, which a lot of people largely know. TransLink had a strategy, same as the vision for Belfast Grand Central Station, to eventually abolish each of these signalling controls and rationalise them into one regional train control centre located at Langan Place. And this facility is now known as NIROC. So as you can see, there's some photos. So the changes would be necessary. As we said, we'd use an old NX panel. Parts were getting very expensive, difficult to source. So we decided to implement Phase 1A as part of the Belfast Transport Hub, which is now Belfast Grand Central Station. So what is Phase 1A? So that's commission the Grand Central interlocking recontrol of Adelaide and Dunmurry. Phase 1B is the recontrol of the interlocking at Belfast Central, Lagan Junction, York Road and Craigavad and Bangor. And Phase 1C is recontrol of interlocking at Bleach Green, Carrickfergus, Salt Mines, Whitehead, Marmore, Larne Harbour, Templepatrick, Antrim and Marabeg. And as we just said, then also it's controlled by a new NIROC VSES, which is the VDU based signalling control system. So state of the art, basically fit for purpose for today, meaning more reliant and more better for our customers. So going back to the delivery in the summer and how we do it, you can see there is a traffic management plan version 11. So it gives you the scale of the amount of interfaces and integration between everyone. It wasn't just Babcock out inside managing from a railway point of view. As a program manager, you really had to look at the interfaces with the fire and Sear team as well. We also had like live operational bus that ran through the site at all times, apart from a couple of little mini blockades where we had to build out roundabouts, but largely never stopped running the bus operations through the site. You can see logistically how hard it was. We had to install new wraps to allow the nighttime working. CDM boundaries were checked weekly, sometimes daily, and reissued to all contractors. And that was quite a feat. The boundaries were always moving, always making them secure and making sure health and safety at the forefront. But there was so much things that from a railway systems point of view that need to get integrated, like bonding plans, the commissioning plan. I've never seen a more detailed commissioning plan to make sure the entry into service was run so successfully. If I was to describe my job, I say it's like a Tetris puzzle. The pieces fall fast and you just try and make sure there's not as many holes or gaps left in the puzzle. And if you do, you get a contingency, a mitigation plan, and fix it. And it is with the whole team that this was delivered successfully. It kind of gives a nice diagram showing, as we go through slides, of how the phasing of the P-way and the S&T was delivered. You know, we've got the up and down Dublin, which you can see in the blue and the pink at the top, with the new line coming in as well. We've got the Blythefields, which is in the yellow. And then we have the up and down Central, which is the old green, which is just now one chord, the Central reversible. But again, it kind of gives you a feel like of the amount of materials we had on the left-hand side. You know, we have 3 panel lifters, we had 3 RTs, we had, you know, like very small 2 dozers, but things like, you know, McCollam's panel lifters does make things easier. And one of the big kind of things I seen that really seemed to help was like having track dumpers rather than the rubber wheels. Like the 360 turn, able to get in and out quick on site, really helped from a program and ensure everything ran smoothly. There was such a detailed hour-by-hour program, which to the credit of Babcock kept everything quite robust and realistic what could be achieved. So we started on the 11th of May 2024, and this is when Great Victoria Street closed for the final time. There was 11 hours of signalling. So as you can imagine, in the first hour's levels of blockade, we need to be wheels free. There's all that decommission from Great Victoria Street, and the area in the black, which now is becoming redundant to the right-hand side going into Belfast Great Victoria Street, needed to be burned out and stripped out. That area is now the new bus yard. So there was a rapid speed come the 11th of May needed by both contractors from a lay down area and also from a bus yard point of view, had to start pretty fast, straight in and straight out. I always found the different phases, like at the 11th of May for 1 week, you could see the intensity with the amount of heavy engineering works that was required for the amount of lift out of materials. Just some photos going through of the up and down and like an aerial shot back into Belfast Grand Central Station. So there's some nice photos going through to understand. I suppose I should point out this time, and the photo on the left is there was a strategic thinking is in how much you can get delivered on a brownfield site before the opening date. Like that was quite clever because it meant it took all your pressure off your end of your program. But also in 2021, we also awarded ancillary civils contracts to Babcock. So there was extensive amount of troughing work, bases, drainage that we use the rules of route, which is called T3 processions, which means you work between the last train and the first train to basically install all those civils type assets. That was one of the biggest and probably challenging times we had. I would describe it when I spoke to my mom, like from 2021 2023, what's work like. It's like peeling the biggest bag of potatoes. It's tedious, it's repetitive, it seems to keep going on and on and on, but the beauty is the roast potato at the end. And that's the only way I can describe ancillary civils. It just seemed to be repetitive and kept going to deal with the problems. If we hadn't dealt with those problems, then we would have been in a very different situation going into the summer blockade. It meant all the uncharted services, all the sheet piling, all the kind of heavy kind of bitty work was cleared before we got into the main blockade. We also had to work very extensively with our colleagues in operations because it's not easy to shut down a railway for this length of period of time. We get that. Whereas hours and hours of going through blockade strategies and understanding our revenue time when basically maybe it's not as peak and using the summer blockade as an ideal opportunity. It also helps from us from when we're starting to plane line. It means ground is good, weather is good, less chance of going into program delay and therefore having overruns, which no one wanted. This I'm kind of just holding up on the slide because it kind of gives you the amount of work and having the effects like the Charlie Limas, the points, the amount of we had to commission and decommission during this period. So we removed the old route and that's everything in the green. So it all became disconnected as part of the phase 1 come the 11th of May. And then you see everything sitting in the red out the right was everything built in the brownfield, which basically was ready to be connected into Belfast Grand Central Station. Here's kind of a good scale, like just understand of the planning, just the hatched area. So I kind of showed this. One of the big things is this lay down area. In 2021, to try and beat the markets, we procured all of our rail, 100%, and procured all of our sleepers. But where do you store it? So we had to acquire land out of this project, but laydown space became so critical. So that area on the left and hatch became quite optimum land, and also where we burned out the tracks into Great Victoria Street, a bit at the bottom, that's where users are laid down. I would say it was one of the biggest challenges was the construction logistics of laydown and how to actually build. It seems a big site, but there was very limited space around for the construction workers. There's some good photos. So it shows Great Victoria Street on the left, and that shows you literally the day after, on the 11th of May, just a couple of days after, how quick we had to go in and strip out and be ready. So 11th of May, stage 3, it kept going. You can kind of see from the 11 hours of blockade, wheels free. You can see the Adelaide and Botanic, the Charlie Limas that basically we were working on. Wheels free period is also quite challenging as program manager. It's basically a lot of coordination with the wider business. You can't have other people out working, obviously steel on steel, and it's just getting that communicated across the business. We continued on, so that's a kind of good idea of the scheme plan with a bit more detail. And then you can see there, everything in yellow is what we built in the part 1 of the summer blockade. I say part 1 because at this point, everything was running into Langan. So the central cords were still, the up and down, sorry, central was still operating, but it was only Great Victoria Street that was closed. And there we've got a few photos that I'm going to just pause on that kind of shows the sequence of work. So like week 1, you can see the scale, the amount that had to be ripped out, the amount of laying, and then you can also see the concrete pour on the bottom right of the slab that had to be done for the remainder of it. And then that actually created a challenge because that creates a bit of a constraint and a bottleneck in your site as well. So that's poured, cured, and ready for loading. So again, working with suppliers and designers, looking at accelerators and how we can speed that process up too. Photos looking back towards the station. That's from Bridge 308A, and you've got the busway structure in the background. Again, you can see your crossovers. And that's looking again, looking towards the station. Is in the furthest point in that photo. Some more like photos that people probably don't see, what works behind the scenes. Topping up stone, the tamper on site. Our S&T colleagues always feel like they never really get a fair amount of photos. It's always big peewees, but loads of signal and telecoms. I've learned so much about top nutting, and I don't know what else from an S&T point of view in this project, but continuous testing and commissioning to make sure every system worked as a whole. So there you can see the works and effects during the blockade, all the amount that had to be done. And then the part 1 is where we transition into part 2. And this commenced on the 6th of July. At this point, this is when Langan, the lines around Langan close. So that means City Hospital comes out, Botanic comes out, and the wider, I suppose, disruption, including the enterprise, started. Again, you start off in your stage with 12 hours enabling wheels free. That's allow our S&T colleagues to go out. Again, doing a lot of disconnections, getting the GVS interlocking and the GVS signals, and then only Langan at this point is open from the north. So basically your Bangor trains and your trains to Coleraine and Derry, Londonderry. So part 2, the blockade, you can see everything in the red is now built. So halfway, probably on the screen to the right, was built off during the brownfield prior to the blockade. Everything to the red there on the Blyfields. The up and down Dublins were built previously during Easter and the part 1, and now we're focusing on the centrals, the up and down centrals, and obviously making those interfaces, those connections where you only could go so far, obviously, because of the live railway nature before in part 1. So this blockade was 4 weeks. It really was between Dunmurry and Botanic. You know, it does include like things like Meeting House Lane and Glebe Road level crossing controls. A lot of limited train movement into Adelaide Depot. So there's a huge amount of coordination as program manager with them as well. And again, using Langan sidings and any kind of ways we can do from a siding point of view for RV movements. And that was critical as well. Got a few more photos of this is in part 2. So this is very much looking at the photographs on the centrals. And obviously it's just a central reversible now. As Mervyn touched on, now the trains come into Belfast Grand Central Station for Portadown. It's a terminus station, and then they go back out around Langan rather than going from Portadown straight to Langan. Again, that's looking down towards City Hospital. In the top left, you can see there's emergency access ramps at the bottom of the platforms. So working again with our colleagues, Fire and Sears as an interface. And then you can see like just the quality of the track install in the bottom right, and just making sure stoned up, ready to tamp, and ready for operational use. So some good photographs. You can see there's probably quite constrained. City Hospital sitting there in the back of the photograph. Sharp crossovers, quite constrained. Have to work what you have to work with. And again, that ran from the 5th of August to the 12th of August. And that was a hard milestone in the railway project. On the 12th of August, we had to commence driver training. And that's when we handed over to our operational colleagues and our end users to take over the track. It all is a huge system, is the only way to describe it. Like there's a huge amount of signalling commissioning as part of this project. It all had to work as one. It all basically had, as I always say, like to press the button and everything works together on that 12th of August. It was no separate contracts working in isolation. We all had to work together as one project on the railway side. And this is what we were left with come the 12th of August. And the photo on the left is the first train coming in the early hours of that morning. So what did we do? Scale is kind of, you can see from this, when you look at Easter to now, so like ballast was 12,000 tons, sleepers was 2,500. We actually cleaned and recycled, Babcock cleaned and recycled 18,500 tons for reuse in the future. To give you a scale of the relays, there's 1,400, 50 kilometers of cabling, and there's 80 new S&T equipment, house and base. So they're the kind of example of things we delivered in the ancillary civils in 2021. Spoil 18,000 tons. So just that's where Easter became a good testing ground to understand that whole cycle and construction from an operation point of view, how quick can you get things in and how quick can you get things out. Just Sunday past, we were our first public live operational railway. So this project was classified as significant under CSM. So we're going through the whole authorization process, and we're given the green light there for last Sunday for the first live public rail, which was a great milestone for Translink. This is a little look into the NIRA Control Centre, which very rarely anybody ever gets to see. So this is us basically setting up, future-proofing, and now working in this new controlled environment with the latest equipment. Just play a wee short video just to sum up everything we've done and just end the presentation. Apologies, the volume isn't working. I just want to say thank you. Mervyn and I would also like to take this opportunity to thank everybody for attending today. I know you're giving up your lunch in the middle of the day, and also to the Permanent Way Institute for this opportunity to present a little snippet and an insight into the delivery of the railway works on Belfast Grand Central Station. So they end there. This is a few photos to show. There's an overview, and we're open to questions.